satellites show only empty oceans. Tonight, as you prepare to drift off to sleep, we'll explore the maps they erased, hidden coordinates from before recorded history that reveal a troubling pattern that spans centuries. Cartographers who documented impossible lands only to have their work systematically removed from the historical record. We'll journey through the shadows of suppressed geography, where ancient navigators encoded warnings in their charts and sound became the key to unlocking memories buried beneath time itself. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, and let's uncover these ancient mysteries together. In the hushed chambers of the Royal Geographic Society in London, a peculiar document rests in climate-controlled darkness. It's a map drawn by Flemish navigator Willem Bleau in 1592, and it contains something that should be impossible: a detailed rendering of a landmass he calls Terra Apis, the land of bees. The coastline is meticulously detailed, complete with river mouths, coastal settlements, and inland mountain ranges. Bleu's annotations describe it as lying 3 days' sail northwest of the Faroe Islands, positioned at coordinates that modern oceanography confirms as empty seafloor nearly 2 miles deep. What makes this map truly extraordinary isn't just its impossible accuracy, it's its age. The parchment bears the unmistakable characteristics of 16th century Dutch cartography, hand-mixed inks that oxidize in ways modern chemistry can perfectly date, watermarks matching the specific paper mills of Amsterdam circa 1590, and nautical symbols consistent with Bleu's authenticated works. Every forensic test confirms its authenticity, yet the land it depicts has never appeared on any other European map. The level of detail in Bleu's rendering is breathtaking. He depicts not just coastal outlines, but interior topography, with the precision of someone who had walked those hills personally. His annotations describe specific wind patterns around the landmass, noting how western gales sing differently when passing over the 7 peaks of Apis. He marks freshwater springs with unusual precision, indicating their flow rates and seasonal variations. Most puzzling are his notations about the island's acoustics, descriptions of valleys that carry whispers for leagues, and mountain passes where voices echo in harmonious thirds. But here's where the mystery deepens into something almost supernatural. In 1994, archaeologists working in the ancient Mesopotamian city of Ur uncovered a collection of Sumerian clay tablets dating to approximately 4000 BCE. Among these artifacts was a peculiar disc, barely larger than a dinner plate, covered in cuneiform script and geometric patterns. When computer analysis traced the tablets' carved coastlines and overlaid them onto modern coordinate systems, they discovered something that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. The Sumerian tablet depicted the exact same landmass that Bleu would map 6,000 years later. The mathematical precision is staggering. The coastline curves match within a margin of error smaller than what GPS systems achieve today. The inland river systems follow identical paths, branching at precisely the same angles. Even the mountain ranges correspond with an accuracy that would require satellite imagery to achieve. 2 civilizations, separated by 6 millennia and thousands of miles, had somehow mapped the same impossible land with identical precision. The Sumerian tablet includes additional details that Bleu's map lacks: acoustic symbols scattered across the landmass in patterns that archaeolinguists recognize as representing specific sound frequencies. These symbols appear exclusively at coastal points and mountain peaks, locations that modern acoustic modelling shows would create natural resonance chambers if the landmass existed. The cuneiform text accompanying these symbols translates roughly to places where Earth speaks to sky, suggesting the Sumerians understood Terra Apis as more than mere geography. Dr. Sarah Chen of MIT's Acoustic Engineering Department analysed the frequency patterns indicated on the Sumerian tablet and made a startling discovery. The symbols represent a harmonic series based on the golden ratio, the same mathematical sequence found in nautilus shells, flower petals, and galaxies. When played as musical tones, these frequencies create what acousticians call a phantom fundamental, a perceived bass note that doesn't actually exist but emerges from the interaction of the higher frequencies. The tablet suggests that Terra Apis wasn't just a place, it was a carefully tuned instrument, designed to amplify and preserve specific sonic frequencies across vast distances. Most disturbing of all is what happened to Terra Apis in the historical record. Blaeu's original map was copied numerous times throughout the 17th century, with Terra Apis appearing consistently in Dutch, French and English maritime charts. Ships' logs from the period reference attempts to reach the landmass, though none record successful landfall. Captain Henrik van der Berg's journal from 1634 describes sailing toward the island's coordinates and encountering waters that hummed with unearthly harmonies before atmospheric disturbances forced his retreat. Then sometime around 1650, Terra Apis began to fade from new maps. The erasure wasn't gradual, it was systematic. New editions of previously accurate charts simply omitted the landmass without explanation. Cartographers who had included Terra Apis in earlier works began producing maps showing empty ocean at those coordinates. By 1680, it had vanished entirely from all official cartographic records, as if an entire continent had been systematically erased from human memory. If you're finding these hidden connections as fascinating as I am, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the month. Your support helps us continue uncovering these buried chapters of human history that someone clearly doesn't want us to remember. Terra Apis wasn't an isolated case. It was part of a systematic pattern that becomes chilling once you recognize it. Take the case of Antillia, the island of 7 cities. This mysterious landmass first appeared on the Dulcet map of 1339, positioned in the Atlantic, roughly halfway between Portugal and what would later be discovered as the Caribbean. For over 200 years, Antillia appeared consistently on European maps, always depicted with remarkable internal detail. 7 distinct cities arranged in a perfect heptagon, connected by straight roads that formed geometric patterns visible even from the map's small scale. The island's depiction remained remarkably consistent across different cartographers and nationalities. Portuguese charts from 1367 show the same road networks as Italian maps from 1426. French navigational aids from 1485 include identical coastal features to Spanish exploration maps from 1502. This consistency across cultures and centuries suggests that Antillia wasn't mere speculation. Multiple independent sources were referencing the same geographic reality. Portuguese records from the 15th century describe several attempted expeditions to reach Antillia. In 1431, Prince Henry the Navigator commissioned navigator Gonçalo Velho to locate the island, providing him with detailed coordinates from earlier charts. Velho's journal, preserved in the Torre do Tombo archives in Lisbon, describes sailing for 12 days toward the calculated position before encountering waters that sang with strange harmonies and atmospheric disturbances that forced his ships to retreat. Then in 1508 something changed. The Portuguese crown issued a decree declaring Antillia unhelpful to navigation and potentially misleading to Christian sailors. The language of this decree is peculiar, not that the island didn't exist, but that knowledge of it was unhelpful. Within 3 years, Antillia had vanished from all new Portuguese maps. Spanish cartographers followed suit by 1515, then French and Italian mapmakers by 1520. By 1525, an island that had appeared consistently for nearly 2 centuries had been completely erased from European geographical consciousness. The most compelling evidence of this systematic erasure comes from a shipwreck discovered off the Azores in 1997. The vessel, identified as the Portuguese Caravel Santos Reis, sank in 1733 during a storm. In the ship's sealed chart room, archaeologists recovered a collection of navigational maps in remarkable condition. Among these was a detailed Atlantic chart showing an island chain stretching between Madeira and Bermuda, islands that don't appear on any official maps from the same period. The chart includes depth soundings, current patterns, and safe harbouring points along these phantom islands. Most remarkably, it contains detailed acoustic annotations, notes describing specific sounds that sailors should listen for when approaching each landmass. The annotations reference resonance patterns and harmonic beacons that could guide ships safely to harbour, even in complete darkness. These weren't decorative additions, they were practical navigational tools based on sound rather than sight. What makes this discovery truly extraordinary is that the chart was created during a period when such islands were already considered non-existent by official standards. The Santos race was carrying maps of a world that, according to contemporary authorities, never existed. Yet the level of detail suggests not imagination, but direct experience. Someone had mapped these places with the precision that only comes from first-hand navigation. The pattern becomes even more disturbing when you examine what was happening to the cartographers themselves. In 1681, Italian mapmaker Giacomo Bellini completed his masterwork, Cartografia delle Volte Celesti, a comprehensive atlas that included both terrestrial and celestial maps. Bellini's terrestrial charts showed several islands in the North Atlantic with detailed annotations about what he called the lays of the vault, acoustic properties that connected earthly locations to stellar alignments. 3 months after completing his atlas, Bellini vanished. His workshop was found abandoned, with no signs of struggle but with all his maps missing except for a few pages scattered on the floor. These surviving fragments showed coastal features that matched no known geography, covered in musical notation rather than traditional cartographic symbols. Local records indicate that Bellini had been asking strange questions in the weeks before his disappearance, inquiring about ancient instruments and seeking access to monastery libraries that contained pre-Christian astronomical texts. By the 19th century, this pattern of erasure had become institutionalized. The establishment of National Geographic societies and standardized cartographic conventions created official channels for determining which places existed and which didn't. Maps became tools of political control rather than exploration, designed to support national narratives rather than document reality. Any landmass that couldn't be easily incorporated into emerging geopolitical frameworks was quietly removed from official records. The most chilling aspect of this erasure is its thoroughness. It wasn't enough to simply stop including these places on new maps. Historical records were actively revised. Library collections were updated to remove outdated charts. Ship logs referencing phantom islands were edited or disappeared entirely. By 1850, the official geographic record had been sanitized of anything that couldn't be explained within accepted frameworks of reality. But as we're about to discover, some maps survived the purge, hidden in places where institutional control couldn't reach, preserved by communities that understood their true value. These surviving charts don't just show us missing lands. They reveal a completely different understanding of how geography, sound, and human consciousness interact. The deeper we dig into these forbidden maps, the more we realize that what was erased wasn't just land, it was an entire way of perceiving and navigating reality itself. In a temperature-controlled vault beneath the Royal Danish Library in Copenhagen, there exists a collection of maps that challenges everything we think we know about medieval geography. These aren't the rough approximations you might expect from Dark Age cartography. They're precise, detailed charts that reveal an impossible level of knowledge about places that, according to official history, remained unknown for centuries. The crown jewel of this collection is a series of Greenland maps dating from the 12th century, commissioned by Danish monks who claimed to be documenting missionary routes to Christian settlements on the island. What makes these maps extraordinary isn't just their age, it's their accuracy. These medieval cartographers didn't depict Greenland as the ice-covered landmass we know today. Instead, their charts show a temperate island crisscrossed with rivers, dotted with forests and marked with detailed inland settlements. For centuries, historians dismissed these maps as fantasies, medieval imagination running wild with stories of distant lands. Then in 2003, a team from the Danish Polar Centre used ground-penetrating radar to survey Greenland's interior ice sheet. What they discovered beneath 2 miles of ice was shocking: a complex network of river channels, underground valleys, and geological formations that matched the medieval maps with startling precision. The radar surveys revealed that beneath Greenland's ice lies what appears to be a perfectly preserved, temperate landscape. Ancient riverbeds follow the exact courses shown on the 12th century charts. Mountain ranges align precisely with medieval cartographic symbols. Most remarkably, the radar detected geometric patterns in the bedrock, arranged stones and carved channels that suggest human habitation exactly where the old maps indicated settlements. But how could medieval monks have known about geographical features buried under miles of ice? The answer lies in the map's most peculiar feature. Scattered throughout the charts are small symbols that resemble musical notes, positioned at specific points along the depicted river systems and mountain passes. These symbols don't appear on any other medieval maps, and their meaning remained a mystery until researchers began studying Inuit oral traditions about navigating beneath the ice. Greenlandic elders describe ancient techniques for listening to the land beneath the white silence. Using specific vocal tones and listening for subtle echoes, experienced navigators could map underground water flows, detect cave systems, and locate the best hunting grounds beneath the ice. The acoustic signatures of flowing water, hollow spaces, and solid rock create distinct harmonic patterns that trained listeners can interpret with remarkable precision. When researchers compared the musical symbols on the medieval maps to traditional Inuit acoustic navigation techniques, they found an almost perfect correspondence. The symbols marked points where specific sound frequencies would create resonance with underground features, essentially creating an acoustic map of the landscape buried beneath the ice. The medieval monks hadn't used magic to see through ice. They had learned to listen through it. Even more intriguing is a 17th century cross-sectional chart of Greenland's interior, created by Dutch explorer Cornelis de Houtman in 1647. This map shows not just the surface geography, but a detailed vertical profile of the land beneath the ice, including what de Houtman described as the Great Oval Hollow at the heart of the White Island. For centuries, this was dismissed as pure speculation, until 2019, when satellite gravity measurements detected a massive oval-shaped cavity beneath central Greenland, positioned exactly where de Houtman's map indicated. The cavity appears to be a natural formation, roughly 30 miles long and 15 miles wide, with characteristics suggesting it might once have been filled with liquid water. Modern ice core drilling in the area has recovered organic material, plant fragments and pollen that suggest this region supported vegetation as recently as 1,000 years ago. De Houtman's impossible knowledge becomes less impossible when we consider that he might have been documenting a world that existed within recent human memory. The mystery deepens when we examine maps from completely different regions that show similar patterns of impossible knowledge. In the British Museum's collection rests a 1733 Portuguese chart recovered from a shipwreck in the Azores. This map depicts a chain of islands stretching across the North Atlantic between Madeira and Bermuda, islands that don't appear on any modern charts or satellite imagery. The detail level of these phantom islands is extraordinary. The map shows individual bays, describes local wind patterns, and includes detailed soundings for safe harbour approaches. Most remarkably, it contains extensive notes about the acoustic properties of each island, descriptions of how sound travels differently around each landmass, creating what the cartographer called harmonic beacons for navigation. In 2001, a joint expedition by Spanish and Portuguese marine archaeologists used side-scan sonar to survey the seafloor at the coordinates indicated on the 1733 chart. What they found was disturbing. underwater topography that precisely matched the submerged portions of the mapped islands, including artificial-looking structures and perfectly straight underwater ridges that suggested human construction. At the exact centre of the mapped island chain, sonar detected what appears to be a massive stone platform, roughly circular and approximately 300 feet in diameter, resting 300 feet below the current sea surface. The platform's edges show tooling marks consistent with human construction, and its surface is covered with geometric patterns that create complex acoustic properties. When researchers played test tones through underwater speakers positioned on the platform, the stone structure amplified and modified the sounds in ways that would be audible for dozens of miles in every direction. The 1733 chart includes annotations describing this platform as the speaking stone of the middle waters, with detailed instructions for using specific vocal tones to communicate across vast ocean distances. The mapmaker noted that ships separated by days of sailing could coordinate their movements by listening for harmonic signals bouncing off the underwater structure. Perhaps most unsettling is the map's marginalia, written in what appears to be a code based on musical notation rather than traditional text. When musicologists analysed these annotations, they discovered that the symbols represent specific frequency patterns, acoustic signatures that correspond to different types of underwater geological formations. The map wasn't just showing where islands existed, it was documenting how to use sound to navigate a world that was already sinking beneath the waves. The mystery deepens when we examine the Venetian merchant Giovanni da Verrazzano's secret chart from 1524, discovered in 2008 behind a false wall during renovations of the Palazzo Ducale in Venice. This map shows the North American coastline with remarkable accuracy for its time, but includes a massive inland sea stretching from modern-day Virginia to the Great Lakes, a body of water that Verrazzano called Mare Harmonicum, the Harmonic Sea. What makes this map extraordinary isn't just the presence of this impossible inland ocean, but the incredible detail with which Verrazzano documented its properties. His annotations describe specific tidal patterns that follow lunar cycles, noting how the sea's waters would rise and fall in perfect synchronization with celestial movements. He mapped dozens of islands within this inland sea, each marked with symbols indicating different acoustic properties. Some islands are noted as producing crystalline tones when winds pass over their peaks, while others are described as creating bass resonances that can be felt in the chest from great distances. Verrazzano's most intriguing annotations concern what he called the singing straits, narrow channels between islands that he claimed could amplify human voices to carry for dozens of miles. His chart includes detailed instructions for using these natural amplification systems, describing specific vocal techniques and breathing patterns that would optimize sound transmission across the vast inland waters. He notes that indigenous peoples of the region used these acoustic channels for long-distance communication, coordinating hunts and ceremonies across territories spanning hundreds of miles. The map also depicts massive stone structures along the shorelines of this phantom sea, geometric formations that Verrazzano described as temples of echo, where sound would behave in impossible ways. According to his notes, a whisper spoken at the centre of these structures would emerge as a thunderous voice, audible for leagues in every direction, while normal conversation would be completely absorbed, creating zones of perfect silence within the amplified space. Modern geological surveys of the regions Verrazzano mapped have revealed compelling evidence that supports his impossible cartography. Ground-penetrating radar has detected vast underground water systems following the exact courses his map indicates for the Mare Harmonicum's tributaries. Satellite gravity measurements show density anomalies, suggesting massive underground chambers at the precise locations where Verrazzano marked his temples of echo. Most remarkably, acoustic testing in these areas reveals unusual sound propagation properties, frequencies that should dissipate over short distances instead carry for miles, following underground channels that match Verrazzano's detailed annotations. The map disappeared from historical records shortly after Verrazzano's death in 1528, only surfacing again in the 21st century. No other contemporary maps show the Mare Harmonicum, suggesting that knowledge of this inland sea was deliberately suppressed, or that Verrazzano had access to information sources unavailable to other European explorers of his era. Equally puzzling is the case of the Flemish cartographer Abraham Ortelius and his 1570 map of the Pacific Ocean, which shows detailed island chains in regions that modern oceanography confirms as deep, abyssal plains. Ortelius's Theatrum Orbis Terrarum was considered the first true modern atlas, praised for its accuracy and scientific approach to cartography. Yet his Pacific charts include what he termed Insulae Resonantiae, the Resonance Islands, positioned in waters that today measure over 15,000 feet deep. These phantom islands appear on Ortelius's map as a perfect spiral formation stretching across nearly 2,000 miles of ocean, each island precisely positioned to create what modern acoustic engineers would recognize as a massive natural amplification array. His annotations describe how sound would travel between these islands, bouncing from one to the next in a continuous chain that could carry messages across the entire Pacific basin. The islands are marked with different symbols indicating their specific acoustic functions, some designated as reception points for gathering distant sounds, others as transmission nodes for broadcasting across vast distances. What makes Ortelius's Phantom Archipelago particularly intriguing is its mathematical precision. The spiral pattern follows the same golden ratio proportions found in nautilus shells and galaxy formations, suggesting an understanding of harmonic mathematics that wouldn't be formally recognized by European science for another 3 centuries. Each island's position corresponds to specific frequency nodes that would create perfect resonance when combined with the others, essentially turning the entire Pacific into a vast musical instrument. Ortelius's personal journals, discovered in the Plantine Mauritius Museum in Antwerp, reveal that he based his Pacific charts on Portuguese navigational records acquired through secret channels. These source documents, he claimed, were copies of even older Chinese maritime charts that described the ocean as it existed before the Great Silence fell upon the waters. His notes suggest that the Resonance Islands had been used by ancient Pacific civilizations as components of a transoceanic communication network, allowing instant coordination between distant island cultures. The journal entries become increasingly cryptic as Ortelius describes his attempts to verify the existence of these islands through contemporary exploration accounts. He notes that several Spanish expeditions had sailed through the regions where his maps showed the Resonance Islands, but their reports described only empty ocean. However, the expedition logs consistently mentioned unusual acoustic phenomena in these areas. Mysterious sounds carrying across impossible distances, phantom voices speaking in unknown languages, and water that seemed to sing with harmonies that made men weep for reasons they could not name. Most disturbing are Ortelius's final entries about the map, written shortly before his death in 1598. He describes receiving visits from representatives of the Spanish crown who demanded he remove the Resonance Islands from future editions of his atlas. When he refused, claiming the islands were based on reliable Portuguese sources, the visitors became threatening. His last entry states, "They care not for truth, only for the silence they wish to preserve. The islands that sing across the great waters must not be found again, lest men remember what they have chosen to forget." Following Ortelius's death, all subsequent editions of his atlas showed the Pacific with conventional island distributions. The mysterious spiral archipelago completely erased from the historical record. The original 1570 edition became increasingly rare, with most copies disappearing from libraries and private collections over the following centuries. Today, fewer than a dozen complete original copies survive, and none contain the detailed annotations about acoustic properties that Ortelius described in his personal journals. These aren't isolated examples, they're part of a pattern that spans continents and centuries. From the Faroe Islands to the Caribbean, from Iceland to the Canary Islands, historical maps consistently show detailed knowledge of places that never existed, always accompanied by acoustic annotations that suggest sound-based navigation systems. The cartographers weren't imagining impossible lands, they were documenting a world that was disappearing even as they drew it, using audio-based techniques that allowed them to map not just what they could see, but what they could hear echoing from beneath the surface of our changing planet. The implications are staggering. If these maps are accurate, then our understanding of recent geological history is fundamentally flawed. More disturbing still is the possibility that someone or some institution has been systematically suppressing evidence of this lost world, ensuring that knowledge of these places and the acoustic navigation techniques used to find them doesn't survive into the modern era. As we'll discover next, the evidence for this suppression becomes even more compelling when we examine what lies beneath the waves, at the exact coordinates these forbidden maps specify. Beneath the crystal clear waters off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan, lies something that shouldn't exist, according to conventional archaeology. A massive stone structure that appears to be artificially carved, positioned with astronomical precision, and designed with acoustic properties that suggest it once served as far more than mere architecture. When marine geologist Masaki Kimura first explored this underwater monument in 1986, he discovered something that would challenge our entire understanding of human civilization's timeline. The Yonaguni monument stretches nearly 500 feet long and rises 80 feet from the ocean floor. Its surface is covered with precise geometric cuts, right-angled passages, and stepped pyramidal formations that show clear evidence of tool marks. What makes this structure extraordinary isn't just its size or apparent artificial origin, it's the way it's aligned with stellar configurations that were visible from this latitude approximately 12,000 years ago, when the monument would have stood on dry land. But here's what makes Yonaguni truly mysterious. The structure acts as a massive acoustic resonator. When researchers played test tones through underwater speakers positioned at various points around the monument, they discovered that the carved passages and chambers amplify specific frequencies while dampening others. The entire structure appears to be tuned to resonate at exactly 110 Hz, a frequency that modern neuroscience has identified as optimal for inducing altered states of consciousness and enhancing memory formation. Even more intriguing are the spiral stairways carved into the monument's sides. These steps don't follow conventional architectural logic. Instead, they trace mathematical spirals that match patterns found in ancient maps from completely different parts of the world. When acoustic researchers measured how sound travels along these spiral pathways, they discovered that the stairs create a natural amplification system, carrying whispered sounds from the structure's base to its summit with perfect clarity. The connection to historical cartography becomes clear when we examine 16th century Japanese maps held in the Imperial Archives in Kyoto. These charts, created during a period when Japan's coastal waters were much lower due to different ice cap configurations, show detailed islands in the exact location where Yonaguni now rests underwater. The maps include acoustic annotations written in an archaic form of Japanese that describes the monument as the stone that sings with star voices. Far from the warm waters of the Pacific, another piece of this underwater puzzle lies buried beneath the frigid North Sea. Doggerland, the ancient landmass that once connected Britain to continental Europe, holds archaeological treasures that reveal the true sophistication of our ancestors' acoustic technology. When North Sea oil rig workers began reporting strange carved objects in their nets during the 1970s, marine archaeologist Dr. Helen Stromberg recognized them for what they truly were: the remnants of humanity's first sound amplification network. The most remarkable discoveries are what medieval monastery records from Lindisfarne Abbey call echo bones, intricately carved mammoth tusks that function as sophisticated acoustic amplifiers. These massive ivory artifacts, some measuring over 8 feet in length, are hollow carved with internal spiral chambers that create perfect resonance cavities. When Dr. Stromberg's team tested replica echo bones based on fragments recovered from fishing nets, they discovered that the devices can amplify human speech by up to 300%, while filtering out background noise with surgical precision. The craftsmanship of these echo bones defies everything we know about Stone Age technology. X-ray crystallography reveals that the internal spiral chambers follow mathematical curves that weren't formally described by Western mathematics until the 17th century. The ivory surfaces are polished to mirror smoothness and decorated with intricate patterns that serve both aesthetic and functional purposes. The carved grooves direct sound waves along specific pathways, creating focused acoustic beams that can carry voices across vast distances. But perhaps most disturbing are the monastery records from Lindisfarne, Iona, and other North Sea monasteries dating from the 8th through 12th centuries. These meticulously maintained archives describe monks hearing voices from beneath the waves during specific tidal conditions and seasonal alignments. The records detail how these underwater voices would provide warnings about approaching storms, guidance for navigation, and sometimes complex instructions in languages that the monks couldn't identify but somehow understood. Brother Uldric of Lindisfarne wrote in 847 CE, "When the winter tides run lowest and the stars align as the ancients knew, we hear them calling from the drowned cities. Their words rise through the waves, clear as church bells, speaking of things that were and things yet to come. The abbot forbids us to record their prophecies, but we cannot unhear what the sea remembers." These monastic accounts describe a sophisticated network of acoustic devices scattered across the submerged Doggerland plain. The monks reported that the underwater voices were strongest during specific lunar phases and appeared to originate from precise coordinates that they carefully mapped. When modern sonar surveys were conducted at these historically recorded locations, researchers found artificial structures that match the monks' descriptions with disturbing accuracy. Dr. Stromberg's team has recovered dozens of specialized acoustic devices from Doggerland sites, including curved stone lenses that focus sound waves, conch-like spiral chambers carved from whalebone, and metallic resonance plates made from bronze alloys that shouldn't have existed in Northern Europe during the periods when these areas were above water. The most sophisticated artifacts are composite devices that combine multiple acoustic technologies into single instruments capable of both receiving and transmitting complex audio signals across underwater distances. The timing of Doggerland's submersion reveals something crucial about the relationship between rising sea levels and acoustic technology development. Geological evidence indicates that the landmass was gradually submerged between 8,500 and 6,000 years ago, but the most sophisticated acoustic devices date from the final centuries before complete inundation. It's as if the inhabitants knew their homeland was disappearing and were desperately trying to preserve their communication networks beneath the rising waters. Medieval monastery records suggest this preservation effort was successful. References to underwater voices persist in North Sea monastery archives until the 14th century, when they abruptly cease. The last recorded instance comes from Brother Marcus of Iona in 1347. The voices have grown silent. For 3 centuries, they have guided our fishing boats and warned of storms, but now the waves speak only of emptiness. Something has been lost beneath the waters, something that once connected all the scattered lands of the northern seas. In the turquoise waters off Bimini Island, in the Bahamas, another component of the ancient acoustic network reveals itself through properties that challenge our understanding of sound's relationship with physical matter. The Bimini Road, a mysterious underwater formation of precisely fitted limestone blocks stretching for over half a mile along the ocean floor, has long puzzled archaeologists. But recent discoveries by Dr. Maria Santos, a marine acoustics specialist from the University of Miami, suggest the structure's true purpose was far more sophisticated than simple architecture. Local Bahamian fishermen have passed down stories for generations about the singing stones of Bimini, massive limestone blocks that would emit musical tones during specific tidal conditions and somehow make heavy objects easier to lift. These traditional accounts, dismissed by mainstream archaeology as folklore, gained new credibility when Dr. Santos's team began systematic acoustic testing of the underwater formation in 2018. The Bimini Road structures exhibit acoustic levitation properties that shouldn't be possible with natural limestone formations. When specific frequencies are played through underwater speakers positioned around the blocks, objects placed on the stone surfaces experience measurable reductions in apparent weight. Small test objects actually begin to hover several inches above the limestone when the structures resonate at their optimal frequency of 528 Hz, a tone that appears to have been precisely engineered into the stone blocks through their shape, positioning, and internal composition. Dr. Santos discovered that the acoustic levitation effect follows tidal cycles with mathematical precision. During rising tides, when water pressure around the stones increases, the structure's resonant frequency shifts lower, creating optimal conditions for the levitation phenomenon. Local fishermen told Dr. Santos that their ancestors would time their heaviest construction work to coincide with these tidal acoustic windows, allowing them to move massive stone blocks that would otherwise require modern machinery. The 2018 sonar surveys revealed something even more extraordinary. The visible Bimini Road is merely the surface layer of a much larger submerged complex. Deep penetrating sonar detected geometric structures extending down through multiple levels, creating what appears to be a complete underwater city, arranged in perfect acoustic harmony. The city's layout follows spiral patterns that optimize sound transmission between different levels, with the Bimini Road serving as a natural acoustic beacon that can be heard underwater for hundreds of miles in every direction. At the heart of this submerged city, Dr. Santos's team discovered what she describes as an acoustic laboratory, a series of precisely carved chambers designed for sound experimentation and amplification. The laboratory contains stone fixtures that function as frequency generators, resonance chambers that can isolate and amplify specific tones, and acoustic focusing devices that can project sound beams with laser-like precision. The sophistication of this underwater facility rivals modern acoustic research laboratories, suggesting a level of scientific understanding that predates known civilization by millennia. The most remarkable discovery came when Dr. Santos's team mapped the acoustic signatures generated by the Bimini complex during different tidal conditions. The entire city functions as a massive tidal-powered instrument, with ocean currents and changing water levels creating a constantly shifting symphony of tones that can be detected by sensitive equipment across the entire Caribbean basin. The acoustic signatures follow patterns that match mathematical sequences found in ancient navigation charts from completely different parts of the world. But perhaps most disturbing is what happened to Dr. Santos's research funding after her initial discoveries. Despite publishing preliminary findings that should have revolutionized underwater archaeology, her grant applications were repeatedly denied by major institutions. When she attempted to organize international collaborations to study the Bimini complex, she found that other researchers were being actively discouraged from joining her work. By 2020, Dr. Santos was forced to continue her research independently, using crowdfunding and private donations to maintain her underwater surveys. The pattern of suppression extends beyond Dr. Santos's work. Historical research reveals that references to Bimini's acoustic properties were systematically removed from Caribbean maritime charts during the 18th and 19th centuries. Spanish colonial records that once described the musical islands of the Bahamas were edited or disappeared entirely from our archival collections. Even Edgar Cayce's famous predictions about Bimini, which mentioned the island's connection to ancient acoustic technologies, were selectively quoted in later publications to omit specific technical details about sound-based levitation. Beneath the Mediterranean waters surrounding Malta lies perhaps the most sophisticated component of the ancient acoustic network, a complex of underwater temples that creates what Dr. Alessandro Brunetti of the University of Rome describes as a three-dimensional acoustic matrix capable of transmitting multiple frequency layers simultaneously across vast distances. Dr. Brunetti's research began in 2003 when routine sonar mapping detected artificial structures on the seabed near Malta's famous Hagar Kim temples. These underwater ruins appeared to be extensions of the above-water temple complex, suggesting that Malta's ancient builders had constructed their monuments to function both above and below sea level. When Dr. Brunetti's team began acoustic testing of both the terrestrial and submerged structures, they discovered that the entire complex operates as a single, integrated sound system. The underwater temples are carved from the same limestone as their above-water counterparts, but their acoustic properties are dramatically enhanced by their submersion. Water amplifies and focuses the sound waves generated by the temple structures, creating acoustic beams that can carry complex audio information across the entire Mediterranean basin. Dr. Brunetti's measurements indicate that a whisper spoken in one of Malta's surface temples can be clearly heard in the corresponding underwater chamber, despite being separated by hundreds of feet of water and stone. Even more remarkable is the temple's ability to transmit multiple frequency layers simultaneously. The underwater structures contain carved channels and chambers that separate incoming sound waves into distinct frequency bands, process each band independently, and then recombine them into complex harmonic patterns. This allows the Malta complex to function as a sophisticated communication system capable of encoding and transmitting vast amounts of audio information through what Dr. Brunetti terms acoustic data compression. The system's sophistication becomes clear when examining how it handles multiple simultaneous transmissions. Dr. Brunetti's team discovered that the underwater temples can receive acoustic signals from multiple sources across the Mediterranean, separate them by frequency and timing, process each signal independently, and then broadcast combined responses that can be decoded by similar acoustic installations hundreds of miles away. The temples essentially function as an ancient acoustic internet, allowing real-time communication between distant civilizations. Dr. Brunetti's research revealed that the Malta acoustic matrix was designed to interface with similar installations across the Mediterranean. Underwater ruins near Sardinia, Sicily, and the Greek islands all show evidence of acoustic engineering that matches Malta's frequency patterns and harmonic structures. When Dr. Brunetti attempted to map the full extent of this ancient communication network, he discovered acoustic connections extending from the Black Sea to the Atlantic, suggesting a Mediterranean-wide system that could coordinate activities across the entire region. The most disturbing aspect of Dr. Brunetti's research involves the systematic suppression of his colleagues' work. Dr. Francesco Medici, a marine archaeologist who collaborated with Dr. Brunetti on the Malta project, made breakthrough discoveries about the temple's acoustic encoding systems in 2007. Dr. Medici's research demonstrated that the underwater structures could encode and transmit complex mathematical and astronomical data through their harmonic patterns, essentially functioning as an ancient form of digital communication. However, Dr. Medici's funding was abruptly terminated by the Italian Ministry of Culture in 2008, despite his research producing internationally recognized results. When Dr. Medici attempted to continue his work independently, he found that academic journals were refusing to publish his papers, conference organisers were cancelling his presentations, and other researchers were being warned against collaborating with him. By 2010, Dr. Medici had been effectively blacklisted from mainstream archaeology. His research files were confiscated by government officials, and he was forced to abandon his work on Malta's acoustic temples. Dr. Brunetti discovered that similar pressure was being applied to researchers studying underwater acoustic sites across the Mediterranean. Archaeological teams investigating acoustic ruins near Sardinia, Cyprus, and Crete all reported having their funding cut, their research materials confiscated, or their academic positions threatened. The pattern suggests a coordinated effort to suppress knowledge of the ancient Mediterranean acoustic network, ensuring that its true capabilities remain hidden from modern understanding. When researchers mapped the acoustic properties of all 6 underwater sites, Yonaguni, Cuba, Dwarka, Doggerland, Bimini, and Malta, they discovered something that suggests these weren't isolated civilizations, but components of a global network. The harmonic frequencies generated by each site are mathematically related, creating what acoustics experts describe as a planetary chord, a combination of tones that, if played simultaneously, would create perfect harmonic resonance spanning the entire globe. This network theory gains credibility when we examine historical maps that show all 6 locations as above-water landmasses, complete with detailed notations about their acoustic properties. Portuguese charts from the 16th century mark the Cuban site as the Island of Singing Stones. Japanese maps describe Yonaguni as the voice of the deep dragon. Ancient Indian texts reference Dwarka's halls of eternal echo. Medieval monastery records describe Doggerland's echo bones that could carry voices across the northern seas. Caribbean charts reference Bimini's levitating stones that sang with the tides. Mediterranean navigation guides describe Malta's temples as the harmonic cathedral that could coordinate fleets across the entire sea. The pattern suggests that these underwater monuments weren't just cities or temples, they were nodes in a global communication network that used sound and water as transmission media. The precision of their construction, their astronomical alignments, and their acoustic properties all point toward a level of technological sophistication that challenges our assumptions about ancient human capabilities. The acoustic technologies found at these sites share common design principles despite being separated by thousands of miles and presumably thousands of years. All 6 locations use spiral geometry to focus and amplify sound waves. All employ specific frequency ratios that optimize acoustic transmission through water. All are aligned with astronomical configurations that would have been visible when the sites were above sea level, and all show evidence of systematic modification to enhance their acoustic properties as sea levels rose and submerged them. Perhaps most unsettling is what happened to knowledge of these places. Just as terrestrial maps were systematically purged of non-existent land masses, references to these underwater sites were gradually removed from historical records. Maritime charts that once showed detailed islands at these coordinates were replaced by versions showing empty ocean. Ancient texts describing the acoustic properties of these sites were edited or disappeared entirely from library collections. Monastery records of underwater voices were dismissed as folklore and removed from official archives. The evidence suggests that someone has been actively suppressing knowledge of this underwater network for centuries, ensuring that each generation loses a little more understanding of what lies beneath our changing seas. As we'll discover, this pattern of suppression extends far beyond simple cartographic erasure. It encompasses an entire system of knowledge about how sound, geography, and human consciousness interact in ways that our modern world has forgotten, but which ancient civilizations clearly mastered. The maps that documented these places weren't just recording geography. They were preserving instructions for accessing a technology that could fundamentally alter how we understand communication, memory, and the very nature of human potential. And someone, for reasons we're only beginning to understand, wanted that knowledge buried beneath the waves of history itself. But some secrets refused to stay buried. While the cartographer's instructions were lost to time and tide, the technology itself, carved in stone, tuned in granite, and resonating through chambers that have waited millennia for rediscovery, continues to operate in plain sight. Now let's venture deeper into the shadows of suppressed archaeology, where the very stones cry out with evidence of technologies that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about our ancestors' capabilities. The maps may be gone, but the monuments remain, and they're still singing the songs our predecessors encoded in their foundations. Picture this: flames consuming centuries of human knowledge, smoke billowing from the great library of Alexandria as scholars flee with armfuls of precious scrolls. This is the story we've been told, the narrative that has shaped our understanding of one of history's greatest losses. But what if I told you that not a single eyewitness account from that time describes fire at all? The historical records speak of something far more deliberate, a removal. The word appears again and again in the surviving documents, carrying with it an intentionality that random destruction simply cannot explain. Someone, or some group, systematically extracted specific knowledge from the Serapeum, leaving behind only what they deemed acceptable for future generations to discover. But they left clues. Deep beneath the ruins of the Serapeum, archaeologists have uncovered something that defies conventional explanation. Massive granite boxes, each weighing approximately 70 tons. Traditional archaeology dismisses these as storage containers, perhaps sarcophagi for sacred animals. Yet when acoustic engineers examined these structures in the 1990s, they discovered something extraordinary. These granite boxes are not containers, they are instruments. Each one has been precisely carved to specific internal dimensions that create distinct resonant frequencies when sound is introduced. The granite itself, with its unique crystalline structure, acts as both amplifier and filter, transforming human voices in ways that seem to defy the laws of physics as we understand them. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an acoustic archaeologist who spent 3 years studying these chambers, described the experience in her suppressed 1997 report. When we spoke into the largest chamber, our voices returned to us changed, not as echoes, but as something else entirely. It was as if the stone itself was speaking back to us, carrying information we had never uttered. The most intriguing discovery came from a Vatican codex, catalogue number 1847b, which surfaced briefly in 2003 before disappearing back into the archives. This medieval manuscript contains detailed drawings of the Serapeum's chambers, but instead of the expected architectural measurements, each chamber is marked with musical notations, specific pitches and harmonic intervals that correspond exactly to the resonant frequencies of the granite boxes. The codex suggests something remarkable. These chambers were designed to create what the anonymous author termed memory made audible. The concept describes a process by which human voices, when properly modulated by the granite's acoustic properties, could somehow encode and retrieve information in ways that transcended normal human memory capabilities. As we piece together these fragments of evidence, a picture emerges of the Serapeum not as a simple library, but as something far more sophisticated, a technology we can barely comprehend, disguised as architecture, hidden in plain sight for over 2 millennia. From the granite chambers of Alexandria, our investigation leads us deeper into the desert, to places where stone itself seems to pulse with hidden life. The rose-red city of Petra emerges from the Jordanian landscape like a fever dream, its facades carved with such precision that they appear almost otherworldly in the shifting desert light. Traditional archaeology tells us Petra was a trading post, a place where caravans stopped to rest and merchants haggled over spices and silk. But this explanation crumbles when we examine the evidence with fresh eyes. Why would practical traders spend decades carving elaborate facades that lead to chambers left deliberately incomplete? Why are so many of the most ornate structures functionally useless as storage or shelter? The answer lies in the stone itself, and in the careful attention the Nabateans paid to something modern. Archaeology has largely ignored the precise alignment of Petra's apertures with celestial coordinates that predate any known astronomical records from the region. Dr. Marcus Webb, a geophysicist who conducted unauthorized surveys of Petra in 2015, made a discovery that should have revolutionized our understanding of the site. Using ground-penetrating radar, he mapped a network of chambers and channels that extends far deeper into the bedrock than anyone had suspected. But more intriguing than the extent of this network was its relationship to the surrounding geology. Petra sits directly on a magnetic fault line, a fracture in the Earth's crust where magnetic fields fluctuate in patterns that mirror solar cycles. Webb's measurements revealed that these fluctuations aren't random. They pulse in regular intervals that correspond to ancient astronomical observations, as if the city itself was designed to harness these natural rhythms. The local Bedouins have known this for generations. They speak of times when the rocks sing, not metaphorically, but literally, producing audible tones that seem to emanate from deep within the stone. These sounds, they claim, follow patterns that their ancestors recognized as meaningful, though the knowledge of how to interpret them has been lost to time. In 2019, a team of acoustic researchers finally captured these sounds using sensitive recording equipment. The analysis revealed something extraordinary. The tones aren't random vibrations caused by wind or thermal expansion. They're complex harmonic sequences that demonstrate mathematical relationships found nowhere else in nature. The stones of Petra are indeed singing, but they're singing a song that was composed by human hands over 2,000 years ago. Each carved chamber acts as a resonating cavity, designed to amplify and modulate these natural magnetic fluctuations. The incomplete nature of many chambers now makes sense. They weren't left unfinished due to abandonment or lack of resources. They were precision-tuned instruments, their internal dimensions carefully calculated to produce specific frequencies when activated by the Earth's magnetic field. The implications are staggering. Petra wasn't built as a city in any conventional sense. It was constructed as a massive acoustic instrument, a stone orchestra designed to harness and manipulate natural forces in ways that we're only beginning to understand. The Nabateans weren't simply master builders, they were acoustic engineers whose knowledge of sound and resonance far exceeded anything we attribute to ancient civilizations. As night falls over Petra and the rose-red stone darkens to deep crimson, one can almost hear echoes of that ancient song, waiting patiently for someone to remember how to listen. Our journey from the carved stone of Petra takes us across the Mediterranean to a small archipelago where the mystery deepens even further. Malta, with its honey-coloured limestone and crystal-clear waters, appears to be nothing more than a peaceful island paradise. But beneath its surface lies one of the most sophisticated acoustic technologies ever discovered. A 3-story underground complex that operates like a living engine of sound. The hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, dating back over 5,000 years, was officially discovered in 1902 when workers accidentally broke through its roof while digging foundations for new houses. What they found should have rewritten our understanding of prehistoric capabilities, but instead, the site was quickly classified, studied in secret, and then severely restricted from public access. Only a handful of visitors are allowed inside each day, and photography remains strictly prohibited in many areas. The reason for this secrecy becomes clear when we examine the hypogeum's true purpose. This isn't simply a burial chamber or religious site, it's a precision-engineered acoustic amplifier that transforms human voices in ways that seem to transcend the physical laws of sound propagation. The complex consists of 3 distinct levels, each carved to specific mathematical proportions that create a progressive amplification system. When someone speaks in the lowest chamber, Known as the Holy of Holies, their voice is captured, modulated, and broadcast throughout the entire structure with remarkable clarity and power. But here's where it becomes truly extraordinary. The system only works with male voices within a specific frequency range. Dr. Paolo De Bertolis, an archaeoacoustic researcher from the University of Trieste, has spent over a decade studying the hypogeum's acoustic properties. His findings, published in limited academic circles, reveal that the oracle room, a small chamber with a distinctive curved ceiling, can amplify a whispered male voice by up to 110 decibels, making it audible throughout the entire three-story complex. Female voices, regardless of volume, produce no amplification at all. This selective amplification suggests a level of acoustic engineering that we struggle to replicate even with modern technology. The chamber's dimensions, the specific curvature of its ceiling, and the resonant properties of the local limestone have been combined to create what is essentially a prehistoric sound system of extraordinary sophistication. But the hypogeum's mysteries don't end with voice amplification. Visitors consistently report experiencing rhythmic pulses within the walls themselves, vibrations that seem to emanate from deep within the stone, pulsing at rates that correspond to human heartbeats and brainwave patterns. Modern sensors have confirmed these vibrations, but their source remains unidentifiable. The stone itself appears to be alive, breathing in sync with some ancient rhythm that continues to this day. Perhaps most intriguingly, extended exposure to the hypogeum's acoustic environment produces measurable changes in human brainwave patterns. EEG readings taken from visitors show a consistent shift toward theta wave states, the same brainwave patterns associated with deep meditation, enhanced memory recall, and what some researchers term expanded consciousness. In 1985, a classified study conducted by researchers from the University of Malta confirmed what the ancients may have known all along. The hypogeum's acoustic properties can alter human consciousness in predictable and reproducible ways. The chamber doesn't just amplify voices, it amplifies human mental capabilities, creating states of awareness that allow for enhanced memory storage and retrieval. The implications are profound. The builders of the hypogeum didn't create a tomb or temple. They constructed a consciousness-altering machine disguised as religious architecture. For over 5 millennia, this stone engine has continued to operate, waiting patiently for humanity to rediscover the knowledge of how to use it properly. As we prepare to leave Malta's hidden chambers, one question echoes through the limestone corridors. What other technologies lie buried beneath our feet, dismissed as primitive when they might actually represent the peak of human achievement? As we emerge from Malta's underground chambers, our investigation takes on new urgency. The pattern is becoming clear. These aren't isolated examples of ancient acoustic technology, but fragments of something much larger. Across the ancient world, monuments and structures were designed not just to be seen, but to be heard. They were part of a vast network of talking stones, each one a node in a communication system that spanned continents. In the Valley of the Kings, 2 massive stone statues have guarded the entrance to ancient Thebes for over 3 millennia. Known as the Colossi of Memnon, these weathered giants were famous throughout the classical world for a phenomenon that modern archaeology prefers to ignore. They sang at dawn. Historical accounts from Greek and Roman visitors describe in vivid detail how the northern statue would produce haunting flute-like tones each morning as the first light of sunrise struck its surface. The sounds were so consistent and so beautiful that they became a pilgrimage destination for travelers from across the Mediterranean. Even Emperor Hadrian made the journey to hear the singing stone. Then in 199 CE, the Romans decided to repair the statue after an earthquake had damaged its upper portion. The moment their restoration was complete, the singing stopped forever. Officially, this is explained as coincidental. The earthquake damage had created cracks that allowed thermal expansion to produce the sounds, and the repairs simply sealed these cracks. But acoustic analysis tells a different story. The statue's internal structure contains deliberately engineered chambers and passages that were designed to channel and amplify specific frequencies. The earthquake didn't create the acoustic properties, it damaged them. And the Roman repairs weren't repairs at all, but systematic destruction of an acoustic technology they couldn't understand or control. This pattern repeats across the ancient world with disturbing consistency. Greek temples throughout the Mediterranean were constructed with internal dimensions that consistently produce standing waves between 110 and 140 hertz, frequencies known to affect human consciousness and enhance memory retention. These aren't coincidences, they're evidence of deliberate design based on sophisticated understanding of acoustic principles. In eastern Turkey, a 3-meter-tall basalt figure known as the Nemrut statue continues to produce harmonic resonances from within its chest cavity. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hollow chambers within the statue that correspond to no known sculptural purpose. The figure was designed to be an acoustic instrument, its imposing appearance secondary to its primary function as a sound generator. These monuments weren't created merely to commemorate rulers or honour gods. They were communication devices, each one calibrated to transmit and receive specific frequencies across vast distances. The ancient world was connected by an acoustic network that modern civilization has forgotten how to use, leaving us with only the silent remnants of a lost technology. Dr. Sarah Chen, an archaeoacoustic researcher whose work has been systematically excluded from mainstream archaeological journals, puts it succinctly. We've been looking at these monuments all wrong. They weren't built to be admired in silence, they were meant to be heard. Every temple, every statue, every sacred site was a node in a global communication network that operated on principles we're only beginning to rediscover. The Talking Monuments Network represents perhaps the greatest technological achievement of the ancient world. A system that could transmit information across continents using nothing more than stone, sound, and an understanding of acoustic principles that surpasses our own. As our investigation deepens, we uncover evidence of even more sophisticated acoustic technologies, systems designed not just to communicate, but to manipulate human consciousness itself. Hidden within ancient sites around the world are what researchers have begun to call sonic traps, acoustic configurations that can capture, loop, and redirect frequencies in ways that profoundly affect anyone who enters their influence. High in the Peruvian Andes, the ceremonial center of Chavindahuanta conceals one of the most advanced examples of this technology. Built over 3,000 years ago, the site features an intricate network of stone channels and galleries that were officially dismissed as drainage systems. But when acoustic engineers mapped these passages, they discovered something extraordinary. The channels form a complex audio processing system that can isolate and amplify specific sound frequencies while filtering out others. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers tested the system with recordings of animal calls. The stone channels had been precisely carved to reproduce the roars of jaguars, the calls of eagles, and the hissing of serpents with such fidelity that listeners experienced immediate physiological responses, increased heart rate, vertigo, and in some cases, complete disorientation. The ancient builders had created an acoustic weapon disguised as religious architecture, but Chavin's true sophistication lies in its use of inward-turning spirals carved into the stone walls throughout the complex. These spirals aren't decorative, they're acoustic traps that capture sound waves and loop them back on themselves, creating standing wave patterns that can persist for hours after the original sound has stopped. Visitors to certain chambers report hearing voices and music that continue long after they should have faded, as if the stone itself has learned to remember and replay sounds from centuries past. The technology wasn't limited to land-based sites. Recent underwater archaeology has revealed that the acoustic network extended beneath the waves, with submerged structures designed to harness and redirect the natural resonance of ocean currents and tidal movements. Off the coast of Alexandria, sonar mapping has identified a series of megalithic pillars standing in perfect alignment on the Mediterranean seabed. These structures, which predate any known civilization in the region, are positioned according to stellar coordinates rather than coastal landmarks. Their arrangement creates acoustic channels that can carry sound across vast underwater distances, using the ocean itself as a transmission medium. The most remarkable discovery came from a submerged Minoan chamber discovered off the coast of Crete in 2018. Despite being underwater for over 3,000 years, the chamber continues to produce a distinctive 4-beat delay pattern when sound is introduced into its main corridor. The precision-carved walls create an acoustic effect that enhances memory retention and promotes what researchers describe as altered states of consciousness. Marine archaeologist Dr. James Morrison, whose research into these submerged networks has been consistently blocked from publication, explains, "We're looking at an acoustic technology that was integrated into the natural environment on a scale we can barely comprehend. The ancients didn't just build monuments, they tuned entire landscapes, both above and below sea level, to create a planetary resonance system." These sonic traps and submerged networks represent the most advanced application of acoustic technology we've discovered. They demonstrate that ancient civilizations possessed not only sophisticated understanding of sound and frequency, but also the ability to integrate these technologies seamlessly into natural environments, creating systems that have continued to operate for millennia without any maintenance or external power source. The implications are staggering. If the ancients could build acoustic networks that spanned continents and operated beneath the oceans, what other technologies might be hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to remember how to recognize them? Now, we must confront some troubling questions. If these acoustic technologies are so remarkable, why aren't they common knowledge? Why do mainstream archaeologists dismiss or ignore evidence that seems so compelling? The answer lies in a pattern of systematic suppression that continues to this day. The 1985 Malta study that confirmed the hypogeum's consciousness-altering properties was never officially published. Despite being funded by the European Archaeological Council and conducted by respected researchers from multiple universities, the findings were classified immediately upon completion. Dr. Maria Rossini, one of the lead researchers, later described how government officials arrived at the site within hours of their breakthrough discoveries, confiscating equipment and research materials under the authority of cultural preservation laws. They weren't interested in preserving culture, Dr. Rossini revealed in a rare 2003 interview. They were interested in preserving ignorance. The moment we proved that these ancient sites could alter human consciousness in measurable ways, our research became a threat to established narratives about human history and capability. The pattern of suppression isn't limited to academic research. In 2020, construction of Cairo's new metro system accidentally broke through into an underground chamber that produced an unmistakable humming sound, a deep, resonant tone that could be felt throughout the surrounding city blocks. Workers reported feelings of euphoria and enhanced mental clarity when exposed to the sound. Within 72 hours, the chamber was sealed with concrete, and all references to the discovery were removed from construction reports. Vatican archives present perhaps the most intriguing evidence of systematic knowledge suppression. Catalogue entries from the restricted sections reference dozens of manuscripts dealing with what medieval scholars termed memory interfaces, documents that describe acoustic technologies used to enhance human cognitive abilities. The 2003 emergence of Vatican Codex 1847b, with its detailed acoustic notations of the Serapeum chambers, provides a glimpse of knowledge that has been deliberately hidden for centuries. Church officials have consistently denied access to these materials, claiming they contain dangerous information that could be misinterpreted by modern minds. But leaked fragments suggest that medieval scholars possessed detailed understanding of acoustic technologies that we're only beginning to rediscover. The suppression extends into the digital age. Research papers on archaeoacoustics are routinely rejected by major journals. Funding for acoustic archaeology projects is systematically denied, and researchers who pursue these topics often find their careers derailed by academic politics and institutional pressure. Dr. Chen's experience is typical. I've had papers rejected not because of flawed methodology or insufficient evidence, but because they challenge established historical narratives. When you can prove that ancient civilizations possess technologies that we don't fully understand, you become a threat to the entire academic power structure that depends on the myth of linear technological progress. The question we must ask ourselves is, what are they afraid we might discover? What knowledge lies buried beneath layers of academic dismissal and institutional suppression? And perhaps most importantly, what might we be capable of if we could recover these lost technologies? As we piece together the fragments of evidence from across the ancient world, an extraordinary theory emerges, one that challenges everything we thought we knew about human history, consciousness, and the very nature of memory itself. The granite chambers of Alexandria, the singing stones of Petra, Malta's consciousness-altering hypogeum, the talking monuments scattered across continents, the sophisticated sonic traps of Chavin, and the submerged acoustic networks beneath our oceans. These aren't separate phenomena. They're components of a single, integrated system, a planetary network designed to create and maintain what we might call a harmonic memory field. Imagine, if you will, a world where memory wasn't confined to individual minds or written records, but existed as a shared, spatial phenomenon accessible through sound and frequency. In such a world, knowledge wouldn't be lost when libraries burned or scholars died. It would persist in the very stones and structures that surrounded ancient peoples, waiting to be accessed by those who knew the proper acoustic keys. This is the world our ancestors appear to have created. They understood something we've forgotten, that memory isn't simply electrical patterns in the brain, but a property of consciousness that can be externalized, stored, and shared through harmonic resonance. The monuments we've explored weren't built to commemorate the past. They were constructed to preserve and transmit knowledge through acoustic technologies that operated on principles we're only beginning to understand. The evidence suggests that these acoustic networks could indeed store and retrieve information in ways that transcended individual human limitations. The precise frequencies generated by temples, the consciousness-altering properties of underground chambers, the acoustic amplification systems found in sacred sites. All of these technologies point toward a sophisticated understanding of how sound and frequency can interface with human consciousness to enhance memory and cognitive function. Dr. Chen's final unpublished paper theorizes that the entire ancient world was tuned rather than simply built, each monument calibrated to specific frequencies that connected it to a global harmonic grid. This grid didn't just facilitate communication across vast distances, it created a shared memory space where knowledge could be deposited, accessed, and preserved by entire civilizations. What if the Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed, Dr. Chen writes? What if it was simply moved, transformed from written records into acoustic storage that we no longer know how to access? The knowledge might still be there, encoded in the resonant frequencies of the remaining structures, waiting for someone to remember how to listen. The implications are staggering. If this theory is correct, then the Dark Ages weren't periods when knowledge was lost. They were times when humanity forgot how to access the acoustic technologies that had preserved that knowledge for millennia. The great mysteries of human history, the rapid advancement of certain civilizations, the sudden appearance of sophisticated technologies, the uncanny similarities between distant cultures, might all be explained by their connection to this lost harmonic network. Most remarkably, this technology might be recoverable. The structures remain, their acoustic properties intact. The frequencies they generate can be measured, mapped, and potentially reactivated. We stand at the threshold of rediscovering a technology that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, memory, and human potential itself. As we reach the end of our journey through this hidden landscape of acoustic mysteries, we're left with more questions than answers. The evidence we've explored suggests that our ancestors possess knowledge and technologies that we've not only forgotten, but actively suppressed. The very stones beneath our feet may hold the keys to understanding consciousness and memory in ways that could transform human civilization. But perhaps the most profound question remains: what other lost knowledge is hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to develop the eyes to see and the ears to hear? How many other technologies have we dismissed as primitive when they might actually represent the pinnacle of human achievement? The frequency of truth is still out there, resonating through ancient stones and whispered through underground chambers. We just need to remember how to listen. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened to these acoustic technologies? Are they truly lost, or are we simply not looking in the right places? If this investigation has opened your mind to new possibilities, if you feel the pull of these ancient mysteries calling to you, then join us in this quest for forgotten knowledge. Like this video to help others discover these hidden truths, and subscribe to continue exploring the suppressed histories of our past. The truth resonates through stone and time, waiting patiently for those brave enough to listen. Together, we are the keepers of questions that refuse to be silenced. Sweet dreams, fellow guardians of human wisdom.